Tracy's back, and we're going to be able to see your charts this time. I'm going to make you the presenter again, Trace.
All right, can you hear me?
That is, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Tracy, you could tell you're a trader because you're persistent. You know, a lot of people give up. What do you say and think when you see tweets about people who say, I can teach you the secret of trading for a certain amount of money? What do you think the secret to trading is? That there is no secret?
That there is no secret. The secret is there is no secret.
Yeah, I agree with you. So why don't you tell our audience how long you've been at it?
So, well, I started back in 2005 as a broker, and kind of moved my way up the ladder, so to speak. I started as a broker, and I worked on the trade floor, and then now just as an independent trader. Okay,
so you want to show us your setup and what you're looking at? We've had a great recovery in the crude market from the depths of desperation with everything. There's a screen share option on top.
All right, let me just move this chart. How's that?
That does it. Okay, beautiful, Tracy. What nice adjustment. So, we're looking at, okay, so a lot of people are thinking we'd have maybe some type of head and shoulders formation. I know you also follow the fundamentals in energy. I know you trade based on technicals. So what are your thoughts about what's happening in Venezuela? And is that a factor into the strength here that we're having in, say, the last week or so, pushing it up to new recovery highs?
I mean, I definitely think that that has a little bit to do with it. I mean, that's kind of a loaded question because we have so many opposing forces fundamentally right now going on in the crude market.
Okay.
You have Venezuela's sanctions, OPEC cuts, and Canada cuts on one hand, and then on the other hand, we have this global growth slowing. We have some demand slowing, and things of that nature. So it's kind of a push-pull on the crude oil market. But as far as Venezuela is concerned, I think that ultimately it will by default kind of push the WTI market up, but I think it will affect the Brent market more because Venezuela crude is more of a sour crude. So I think that a really good way to kind of play that may be the WTI Brent spread.
Okay, where you're long Brent, short WTI?
Right.
Okay.
Because I think what happens is I'm kind of mixing fundamentals and technicals all together. But I mean,
that's what we do.
As far as Venezuela is concerned, I mean, what we're going to see is kind of a change in global trading routes, right? So Canada just had a 350,000 cut, and they just scaled that back by 75,000 barrels because we can potentially use Canadian crude to swap out for Venezuelan crude, as well as we can get some of the more sour grades, also increase some of the imports from the Middle Eastern countries. So I think for WTI, it's not as big of a factor as it would be, say, for the Brent market, because you're pulling that out of sort of the Brent market.
Okay, so you're an energy trader. Does that include things like nat gas and what's happening in Chicago and the Midwest? Okay, mainly just crude. So
mainly just crude. I don't trade nat gas. No.
It's pretty wild, isn't it? So you look at this technically, it looks like you have some levels here that we're at. What are those levels based upon that you have? One here and then one at 57.88, and then looks like $60 a buck.
Basically, but it's not on this chart. I kind of just drew this chart up for this webinar. But a lot of these are volume levels. right, and consolidation zones. So this would be, where we have, if you have the volume profile up here, where
okay, so you use that. I think I remember you use that like market profiles as a something technical that shows all these areas where volume came in. Is that what you're talking about?
I use TPO and volume profile, so market profile and volume profile, which are two separate things. I personally like TPO better, but I use volume profile as well.
Okay, so go ahead.
If you just want me to go over this chart really fast.
Yeah. Are we breaking out here, Trace? Say someone came to you right now and said, Tracy, I'm flat crude. I have a bullish bias. What do you do here with it pushing at new highs? Do you wait for a setback, or do you just put a piece on and then if it pulls back, add on to it?
No, I mean, I personally, what we have going on here, go over a little bit of the background of this chart a little bit first. Is, right here was kind of the OPEC meeting, right? And they decided to cut because they wanted to stabilize the oil market. So we did, kind of, stabilize it a little bit. We have this consolidation zone here until the end of December came and whoosh, right?
Yeah.
And then we saw at the beginning of January, we sort of came back up into the consolidation zone and kind of been trading in here for a while, which, to be expected. We kind of got two opposing, forces going on here. First, you could look at this and call this a head and shoulders. I personally do not like that chart pattern. I think it's unreliable. It's just a personal thing because I've seen too many times that it doesn't work out. But if you like that chart pattern, then yes, it's obviously present here. But then we have this. If you look at just this piece over here, we have this interim. We have this ascending broadening wedge, which is a bearish chart pattern. So, I would kind of like to see what it does up in this area, which is, maybe around 55, 60 area. If you wanted to long this, just technically speaking, if you wanted to long this, I would wait until a full candle closed out above this, right? Broke out. We have a full candle close, have a pullback, and then take the long from there.
Okay, it sounds to me like you're waiting or stalking potential shorts up against the upper wedge line. Am I reading you correctly?
Yeah, I think that we have, two potentials here, either, two scenarios that could happen. You could have, this pattern come to fruition, which would mean we could get a bigger pullback down to that 48 area is where this price pattern would target. And then possibly see another move up into, seasonality. We could have long seasonality coming up, so you could have a pullback down to this 48 area, and then move up again. That's kind of looking far out for me because there's so many mitigating factors in the market. There's a lot of correlation to ES right now. So if
I was just going to ask you about that, Trey. So, have you ever seen the crude oil and the S&Ps marry up and become Siamese twins like it was from October through the end of the year before?
Not like that, no.
Yeah, me either. Right. So now do you take into consideration risk on when you're trading crude and if the S&Ps were to correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, if we're looking at if we start having a major pullback in indices, then, I think the crude oil market by default may be pulled back, unless something, happens in the Middle East or something like that would, totally mitigate that scenario.
Do you think that there's a possibility for it? The president is arguing with the intelligence community that Iran doesn't really pose a threat, but Bolton and some of his cabinet members are, very hawkish towards Iran. Do you see anything happening there?
I mean, I think that, ultimately, the Pentagon is sort of in charge of that, but, it's definitely something to, keep an eye on. It makes me a little uneasy to, have such, more like hawkish view going on right now.
Yeah, and do you think that it's not just political in Venezuela for us, and of course China and Russia lining up on the other side, that it's really like everything is about oil?
Right. I mean, it's about oil. The problem is that, the U.S. is a little bit too late trying to get in there. I mean, China and Russia have already sort of established themselves within Venezuela. So I think, U.S. is kind of late to the game in that respect, but, we'll see how events sort of unfold.
Yeah, they were in there with Chavez, right? When
back then. And then
the Chinese have bought everything, even countries. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Look at Africa, look at, a lot of places.
Do you follow the Chinese currency to give you any clues on what's happening in oil? I know people do it for precious metals. Does a yuan play into anything? And do you think that the exchange that they opened to trade oil, has that been gaining any traction? That's kind of their game plan to de-dollarize the world.
Right. I don't know if I don't really agree exactly with that narrative, and I think if you look at their current contract that they're trading, most all the trading is within the front month, which means that, really it's just a spec contract and you don't have really any major players in there. So, if they really want to have to make this contract, a different, make a difference to this contract and really sort of, change some of the flows from, WTI or Brent,
they need hedgers to come in.
Yeah, they need to attract some real players, and foreign entities are kind of skeptical to get into the Chinese markets because they have capital controls. So, I think they have a hurdle there.
Okay, and what do you think about U.S. production? It still continues to be very strong. I don't think that anything that they capped a year or so ago are more wells coming online. U.S. becoming, do you believe that we're energy independent in the U.S.?
No, energy independent is sort of a misnomer. I mean, we have global oil flows. So, we will, U.S. now is a major exporter, yes, but we will always import oil. So kind of saying we're energy independent is, again, a misnomer. I mean, most of the refineries within the United States are, tooled for heavier grades and whatnot. You can't just survive off of WTI. So, so that's my feeling on that. But, U.S. is becoming a powerhouse in the industry. But again, crude quality matters. The world can't survive on solely WTI.
I wouldn't want to drink, and I wouldn't want to drink the sour crude, though. Let me ask you this. Maybe a whiskey sour, but let me ask you this: currency, does that fit into your equation? A weak dollar, a strong dollar?
A weak dollar, strong dollar. I mean, it does, but in the longer term sense. So, not so much, an intraday move, but, obviously, if, over the long run, we start to see a major, move up in the dollar, say you're going to see pressure put on all commodities, but not so much in, say, a day-to-day sense. It would have it more in a macro sense.
Okay, and interest rates, they play a role in, for example, all the debt that's been taken on by shale producers and oil companies. Could that also be a macro thing to keep in mind when you're talking about the price of oil?
Well, yes, I mean, definitely you want to keep those things in mind because, say the price of oil, does get too low, then, these companies are, have a major debt load. So, that's something to keep an eye on too. You don't want, the price of oil to get too low because then we have a 2016 all over again.
Okay. Do you keep an eye on or trade around oil shares? Do they give you any kind of indication of what might be happening in energy? I know that sometimes the shares actually lead oil and can outperform, or they could lead on the downside and underperform. Is that also something that you keep an eye on?
Oh, I definitely watch the equity market, energy equity market as a whole.
Okay. Does it give you any tells?
It does, but again, not so much for intraday trading.
Okay. So are you mainly scalping nowadays, Trace, or are you swing trading stuff or position trading here?
More swing trading. I'm not really scalping this.
Okay. And, you have a lot of followers. Do you have any kind of business model? Are you involved with anyone where, people could follow you and learn, and besides Twitter, keep up with what your thoughts are in the energy complex?
Just really Twitter at this point.
Okay. Are you caught in the middle of the cold polar vortex?
It is cold. I mean, I'm up in Canada now, so I mean it's definitely
that's what I mean.
cold.
Yeah.
But not like Chicago.
Yeah, glad I'm not there. So Trace,
right?
do you have any? It's 2019. If someone was to ask you for, how people do outlooks for the year ahead.
Oh no.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah, the market just
The outlook
Sorry,
is the outlook is definitely nerve-wracking. But do you think that we head up towards $60 or so to correct this big decline?
I mean, I think it's definitely possible. Absolutely. I mean, I definitely wouldn't put that out. Is it going to go in a straight line? I don't know. But I definitely can see this market retracing up to that $60 level.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That'd be what, about halfway back, and that was previous support. Yeah. So that would kind of be a natural. So I want to, it's been great talking to you again. I really recommend people follow you on Twitter at Shy Girl, especially if you're an energy trader, because Tracy provides great insight and content all the time. And, I watch what you tweet, and you've helped me a lot over the years, Tracy. I'm glad to call you my trading warrior sister. And
thank you, Dale.
And thanks for and really, thanks for taking some time out of the day to come and talk to us. And I hope 2019 is your best year ever in all ways, not just trading,
and you
but
too.
in all ways. All right, everyone. Go ahead.
You guys are doing a great job over there. So, I listened to your webinar. So, keep up the good work. It's good stuff.
All right. Thank you so much, Tracy at Shy Girl. That's a wrap, everybody. See everyone for the NFP tomorrow. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Umar Tracy's account is at Shy Girl, CHI Girl. And we'll see everyone. What
GRL, not girl.
Oh,
GRL.
Yeah, okay, GRL. So that's it. Thanks again, Tracy. And good hunting, everyone. See you tomorrow. And adios. Thanks for being with us today, Tracy. And appreciate you taking the time. You're one of my favorites on Twitter. Adios.
Thanks.